What's up, y'all? I'm Alan Hain, the Lawn Care Nut, and welcome to episode 7 of Lawns Across America. Hey, so welcome back into my garage this week. Now, we are really close here to the middle of March. We have passed the spring forward phase. Hopefully, you guys have all caught up on your sleep. I don't know how it is for you, but it seems like the older I get, the more the spring forward bothers me or gets me or nails me. Seriously, like Saturday night, for some reason, I don't know why, because we spring forward, like at midnight. So when you go to bed, you throw the extra hour in. But for some reason, Saturday night, my body clock was just winding down, and I went to bed super early this would have been March 9th. I'm recording this here on March 12th, Tuesday here. So this would have been like March 9th, Saturday, and I went to bed at like 7. I don't know why. I don't go to bed quite that early. I know it's rumored that I go to bed early, but actually I just lie to people at conferences when they want to have me stay out and do things I shouldn't do, drink too much and stay out late and, go to Denny's and drink coffee at midnight. They try to have me do those things that I shouldn't be doing. So what I do is I lie to them and I tell them I'm an old Florida retired man and I go to bed early. So I'm glad that rumor is being propagated out there. I want to keep that going. It keeps me safe on the road. But either way, for some reason, I did actually fall asleep at 7 on Saturday. I guess my body was anticipating whatever this crazy spring forward daylight saving time is. And I slept like 11 straight hours, got up Sunday morning, and then had to stay up really late Sunday night editing. I think I was up till like midnight Sunday night editing and finally got our Sunday video published. I'm really proud of that. If you're somebody that has come to the podcast through another means and you don't know, I have a full YouTube channel called The Lawn Care Nut. You can Google that and you'll find it, or YouTube search it, The Lawn Care Nut. And this past weekend, I did a video on figuring out spreader settings. It's one of those things where when you get a fertilizer or other granular product, it'll give you spreader settings on the back, but that's so arbitrary. And if you look at it, and if you really kind of know the thing behind it, it's almost a guess in a lot of cases, because the spreaders that we typically buy as homeowners are not super high quality. And I don't mean that to knock them. That's not what I mean at all. It's just they're not super precision pieces of equipment. There's a lot of plastic pieces in there, thin plastic pieces, springs, and then they're delivered in certain ways. They get knocked around. So our spreaders are not that precision. They're fine for what we're doing. They work well. We can get down a proper application. So don't get me wrong there, but they're just not super precision. So you need to really calibrate your own spreader. You need to know how to do that on your own. So that way when you apply, you can verify. And I like that little term. I started throwing that out. I think it actually should be verify and apply instead of apply but verify. But I still like that term, verify and apply. You want to be able to know how to set your spreader up so that you can verify that the product you're putting down is at the right rate. And that way when you get results or don't get results, then you know, well, hey, maybe my application was off. But if you know that you did these steps and that you verified what your spreader was putting out, what the setting was, you kept a journal of what you put down, if things fail then you know it's not due to application error, or at least you have better data proving that it was not a bad application, that it's something else that may have given you a lack of results or good results. But either way, I just think that you should go check out that video and learn how to set your spreader up. That way, you also have more freedom to choose any product you want that's out there. If you know how to, direct your own strategy because you know how to understand the settings on your spreader and the pounds on the ground that those are going to be able to output, and then you're understanding nitrogen rates and things like that and what the numbers on the bag of the fertilizer mean and how we use those numbers to dictate a strategy. When you start to learn that, you can really start pulling your own levers there, and you can really have a dialed-in strategy that you could take down to a really low budget type deal. You could take it down to a really low input type deal. You can really start having some fun with your lawn instead of just throwing down 4 steps a year and walking away. You can actually, again, optimize it to where it's comfortable for you and to where you can really take some pride in it because you built it yourself. It's kind of like that, So go check that video out. Learn how to set up a spreader. I used a regular Scotts spreader that I just got at the store, like an edge guard. So I tried to get something super common that a lot of you could relate to. But then I do show you the 2600A plus settings because that's like my daily driver. That's the product there, or that's the, the spreader that I use. So I know a lot of you guys have that too. So definitely go check that out on the Lawn Care Nut channel. Now, with that, I also did start a new series in the email list this week or kind of hint to it. And we're going to start talking nitrogen rates now. I've talked about it last year extensively and even in years previous, but we have a lot of new folks in the community, and it's always good to review these things. How do you calculate nitrogen rates, and why do we calculate nitrogen rates? What does it matter? Why is that leading the strategy? So that's going to be started in the email newsletter. That's going to be that kind of upcoming series that I'm going to do, and then that'll also relate into the YouTube channel itself. So that's really exciting, and I'm really kind of looking forward to exploring that again. And as you guys will realize that you've been around for a while, as I'll talk differently. As the years go on, I learned to teach a little bit differently or educate in a different manner. I'll talk differently. And then obviously I have this different forum here on a podcast now. And even the email is pretty new. Last year is the first time we started the emails where we really started to get detailed. So it's kind of fun to see how my teaching, my teaching ability, is that the word? Just how my teaching progresses, and I kind of am having fun with that and learning to keep relating to those of you that are a little bit more advanced, as well as some of you that are new to the community and just coming in. So cool stuff. So another thing that I started doing is, now that it's warmer here, I've started riding my bike around every morning. For some reason, I'm on this thing where I want to share with you guys like some fitness ideas too, and how to relate fitness ideas to the lawn. That's why we talked about the midweek mow. I'll be mowing my lawn here this Wednesday. That is weeknight lawn work. And part of weeknight lawn work is getting some exercise, getting out on a Wednesday night, clearing your head, put on some music, put on this podcast, mow your lawn, get some me time, get some work done, and accomplish something in the lawn, because the more you mow, the healthier it will grow. So that was part of also an exercise plan that I talked about. And now I've been riding my bike in the mornings. And one of the reasons that it's good to ride your bike other than exercise is you can look at lawns in your neighborhood. So this is speaking to those of you in Florida, even all the way up through the transition zone over into Texas, Southern California, anywhere where your lawns are on the brink of waking up, probably up into the Carolinas in some cases. I know that I was looking at Paul's Prime Cuts. I was looking at his YouTube channel, and he's got tall fescue lawns that are just blowed up dark green. That dude has some gorgeous lawns. So even up into that area where he's at in the Carolinas there, things are really starting to wake up now, it seems. And I haven't been down soil temperature lane in a while. I was dug in so deep rewriting the ebooks in soil temps. I have not been back on the Greencast tool. I don't want to dig into the soil temp rabbit hole any further for a while, so I'm not sure what it's like up there, but I'm just seeing green lawns. So what'll happen is this time of year, though, is some of you guys that in the transition zone that maybe you have Bermuda grass and other people around you have turf type tall fescue, their lawns are greening up and yours are not. And so you kind of worry, is my lawn dead or whatever? I mean, I get these panicked emails from people. They maybe bought their first house during the winter when everybody's lawn is dormant, and they understand that, but now it's spring and everybody else is greening up. Some people might be greening up because they're loaded with Poa annua, and you're not, so that would be a good thing. But for the most part, maybe it's just a different grass type around you, or maybe you do have some challenges with your lawn. Maybe something did happen that you didn't know about. So what you do is you get on your bike, you get out, and you drive around your subdivision and look at other lawns. Make sure they're the same grass type as yours if you are in an area with mixed grass types. If you're in a newer subdivision, chances are it's not going to be that way, that everybody's going to have the same grass type. And look at what they look like. Are they green? Are they not green? How are they comparing to you? And then also look at the common areas, because the common areas are typically going to be taken care of on a real standard professional schedule. At least here, we have good guys that do a good job cutting and trimming. They cut tall. We have St. Augustine grass. They are very consistent with it. They do a really nice job. They also have an irrigation system for the common areas, and these guys keep on top of it. Like, I don't ever see broken heads for very long. Like, if one's broken or something, you'll see like the next day they're out there fixing it. They're on it. They watch the irrigation. They make sure the zones flow. They really monitor it. So you got that. And then they also have a service that treats it. Now, we're an HOA. They're not going to go for the top treatment. You know what I'm saying? They're going for what they can, but it's maintained properly and what I would call standard, our common areas here. And I look at those. How green is the common area now, and how does that compare to my lawn and where my lawn stands? And then everyone else's lawn. And then you know who the lawn care nuts are in your subdivision. How does that guy's lawn look? Also, how do the professionally treated lawns look? Like in my neighborhood right now, most of the professionally treated lawns look really good. I mean, they're standing out. I mean, it just shows. Now, does that mean they're doing a good job? Yes, it does. But I'll tell you what, the people that don't do anything are really showing now. So that's one of those things. Where's my lawn at with that? I'm up there. I'm good. My new sod is still establishing in a couple spots, but for the most part, I'm good. My zoysia is lagging a little bit. Zoysia is a little bit slower to establish. That's one of the things, if you guys ever do zoysia, it's a little bit slower. But I'm looking at other zoysia lawns in the neighborhood, understanding where I'm at compared to them, knowing that I just had new sod. I don't have quite the root system that they may be. But what I'm saying is use the intel from those lawns around you to compare where you're at, and maybe you're not so bad off as what you think. So that's kind of that little start there and that kind of little get you going for the day. With that, let's go get now into a few questions. I did want to step in here from the studio real quick and let you all know you're going to hear me mention the guides a lot in this podcast. The guides. We have a cool season and a warm season guide, and what that basically is, it's a consolidation of 10 years worth of my content and a lot of the strategies that I talk about in my podcast, email, and on my YouTube channel, and it's all laid out in an easy-to-follow guide. They're well over 100 pages now, quite detailed, but it does serve as a backbone or a base to a lot of things I talk about in the rest of my content. So if you go to thelawncarenut.com, you can pick up those guides. They're fully new, fully updated for 2019. Pick those up today, and that might help shed a little bit of light on some of the things that are coming up here in the podcast. But if not, I do try to give enough detail that you can still learn even without them. With that, let's head right back out into the garage studio. So our first question today, I'm going to go right back up to the region, and I'm going to answer a question from somebody that is up in Northwest Indiana. This one comes from Schererville, Indiana. This is Jeff. And Jeff says, hey, I live up in Schererville, Indiana, brand new to your system, and bought the ebook, learning a lot. Oh, I like that you called it my system. That's kind of cool. I never thought of it that way. But our strategies, yeah, good stuff. He says, a few questions for you. First off, do you recommend mulching or bagging each grass cut? So this is a great question, and it's one we definitely need to kind of start jumping into, as a lot of you guys are starting to mow. So this is cool season turf right here in Schererville, Indiana. He's probably on what I would call an old school lawn. Schererville, there are some new subdivisions in Schererville, but there's also some really nice older areas too. But we're just going to still say it's an old school lawn. And what an old school lawn is it's a cool season lawn that's been around for a while, 20 years or more. Some probably not in Schererville, but in some parts of Northwest Indiana up through there are lawns that may have been around for 80 or 90 years, and they may even have old bluegrass blends that can actually reseed themselves. Newer blends are sterile. The seeds are not viable. Even if you allow them to grow tall enough and fall off naturally and dry up and fall off, they're going to be 99.9% not viable. So some of these old school lawns might have some of those really cool old cultivars, as well as all kinds of cultivars of fescue and rye and other bluegrass that's been seeded in there by owners over the last decades. And so I like those kind of lawns, and I call those old school lawns. Our original church project that we did, which was in Crown Point, Indiana, you can see that on the channel. That is what I would call an old school lawn. That's a public place, but it is definitely an old school lawn. Lots of, even some wide-bladed fescues in there that might seem to stand out a little bit, but when it all gets together, it's a nice looking lawn. And the color is a really nice blue when you use an iron-based fertilizer like Milorganite. So pretty cool there. I definitely recommend, though, that you mulch your clippings. It's just the best thing to do. Return those clippings in, return that carbon back into the soil, return those nutrients back in, and feed those microbes. That's what you want to do. Now, if you get overgrown and you're not able to keep up with the mowing and you are getting clumps, then I would recommend a double cut. And if that's not working, I would recommend you get a better quality mower. This is why I typically recommend, I have a Honda HRX here. I've got a Toro Super Recycler, and then I've got my Toro Time Master. Those are what I would call upper model, not prosumer, but upper echelon homeowner DIYer type mowers. And I would recommend you get one of those. They're going to give you a better overall cut. They're going to get you through that thicker lawn, especially if you're missing cuts, if you're somebody that can't cut twice a week, even in the peak of the season. So for sure, though, you want to mulch when you can. But if you are leaving clumps and you don't have a way to do it, then you're going to need to bag that stuff up. Sure, you do not want to leave clumps on the lawn. So let's see, what else? Second, you mentioned seeding in the fall. When would someone want to seed? Reason I ask is I bought a new construction house and sod was put in the front yard and seed in the backyard. Do I want to continue to seed each fall? This is a great question here. So the first thing is, yes, I do recommend seeding in the fall. I do not recommend seeding in the spring for any type of grass. And warm season friends, we're going to come down to you, don't worry. But I just want to say, I don't recommend seeding in the spring because what's going to happen is you're going to get very good possibility you're going to get overrun with crabgrass that will outrun and outcompete your new grass seed, or at least outcompete it to the point where it will be minimal what you get out of it. It won't be worth it, especially all the chemical that you'll have to use later to kill the crabgrass post-emergently. So that's why we recommend a pre-emergent in the spring to stop the crabgrass. But that also then says, no, you cannot put any kind of grass seed down, because Kentucky bluegrass, turf-type tall fescue, those will also be stopped by that same pre-emergent. So that's why I recommend seeding in the fall. Now, this is an interesting type of a thing that I've seen with new construction homes. So that tells me now that I'm reading this, he is definitely not an old school lawn. He kind of answered that for me. I don't do a lot of pre-planning in this podcast here, as you guys can see, but it's new construction there. So sod in the front, okay, seed in the back. A lot of new construction does that. So interestingly enough, I've seen that here too. I was talking to Lucas, or I haven't seen it. I was talking to Lucas from Scott's, the Scott's company, and he's moving down this way. And I guess he's saying in some of the neighborhoods he's looking at over towards Orlando, they're having St. Augustine grass in the front and Bahia grass in the back. That is an interesting mix. It's got to have something to do with irrigation, I'm assuming, because St. Aug and Bahia are such different grasses. Both are cut tall, though, but anyway, they're doing this a lot up north as well, and that's a challenge because the two will not look alike for quite a while, because the sod just comes in a whole different state than the seed, obviously. You would hope that the seed in the back was not seeded in with a ton of hay garbage, because that'll bring in all kinds of other issues. So in short, I would say in your back lawn, if you've got at least 30% grass that's grown, you want to take on the same mission of a lot of mowing. You want to go ahead and hit it with the Milo pretty much every 4 to 5 weeks, like I do recommend in the ebook, and you want to make sure you keep it irrigated. Get as far down the road as you can. Put down your pre-emergent, though. Try to keep out any garbage that comes in back there, and get as far down the road as you can through the spring and into the summer. Keep it irrigated and see what you can do. What's there. If it's got even 25% turf right now, and you can improve that by 40, 50, 60% just with good mowing and with good irrigation and with good pushing of fertilizer, I think you'll be better off when you get to the fall then. And then in the fall, that's when you can really crank in with the aeration and the overseed, because I will still maintain that seed is cheap, so throw her down. Just pitch it. If you look at our fall applications that Jake the Lawn Kid and I did at our Project Lawn, which is in St. John, Crown Point area of Indiana. If you look at that, it's in a playlist on both of our channels there. If you look at that lawn there was seeded, and you will see it's pretty thin. And from our aeration overseed, it came a long way, a great improvement of thickness, because we doubled down on the fert in the fall and seed and poked a lot of holes, a lot of cool stuff there. We'll talk about not over pushing in a minute, but there are times in the ebook when it is okay to push hard. We're not over pushing, but we're pushing hard, and that's the fall. So my advice to you overall, okay, Jeff, is to push that back lawn when you can, but seed in the fall. Seed in the fall. The front lawn now, you may not have to push that quite as hard. You don't want to push new sod too hard. You want to push roots, and that's where the biostimulants come in for sure. The biostimulants would be great in the back, but in the front, definitely you want the RGS, the Humic 12. You really want to just bolster those roots from that sod, because up there in the Midwest, that clay, I'm okay with laying sod directly on the clay as long as a good finish grade was made, meaning that crust was broken off and the large chunks were taken out, and something like a Bobcat with a box blade or even a hand finish raking was done for a good finish grade. If that was done, the sod will root in fine, and that's why I've always recommended organic fertilizers to add carbon to the soil. But again, you can get a carbon source from the Humic 12. The RGS will stimulate the rooting, which is an incredible product. So those are things that will really help the sod. They'll also help in the back, but they're really important for the sod. So you got a lot you can do there. You're not the only one in this boat, and I would encourage you too to look at other lawns in the neighborhood, same thing, and see how they're faring and how they're coming along, because that back lawn may be a little bit of a slow burn, it may be a little bit of a slow grind, but you will get there. Okay, we're going to stay now up in the Midwest. We're going to go to Wisconsin. I've got a few in. I want to just give a little bit of love to you guys up there in the cold weather, because I know that as March is in the middle of March now, you are really staggering to get outside. You get that one blue sunny day, but it's still super cold, and you bundle up and you go take a walk around the neighborhood, and you'll find a couple redbud trees starting to leaf out a little bit. Maybe you'll find some crocus coming up, and I know it's one of those times when you get excited, but you can't quite get out as much as you want because you have sour days that still come on you, and it seems like sometimes those are on the weekends when you're not working or when you're off. So All right, so this next one comes from Matt, and Matt is up in Wisconsin, and here's what he says. Thank you for your help. This year, I really want to do my own lawn. As you can see, I purchased your ebook, and I'm a huge fan of your videos. I just need a little confidence to make sure I'm doing the right thing. So the reason I chose this out is because I know that there are so many of you that are right where Matt is. You're ready to go. You've got a sound strategy. You're talking through it. He's obviously thinking through it when you hear his questions here. But you just need this little extra nudge, right? And that's what he's telling me. He goes, I just need a little confidence to make sure I'm doing the right thing. So I'm using his example. I'm using Matt's example, Matt from Wisconsin, this week, because I know there are a bunch of you that are exactly in the same spot. So this is me talking to all of you in a certain way. Just understand that what we're talking about here is not that difficult. So we're going to go through this, and I'm going to just talk through the strategy to let you know where he's at with his thinking, and I bet you're right too, because he's right. Okay, here we go. He says, I'm going to use prodiamine, that's our pre-emergent for crabgrass. I'm going to use prodiamine April 12th, and then again on May 20th, and then again sometime in September, assuming the temperature of my soil is correct. Excellent job. That's perfect. So what that tells me is, and I haven't looked at the soil temperatures where he's at because I just know he's in Wisconsin, but I know Northwest Indiana, which is close enough, and I know that these targets are good. And what he's telling me is that he's done his soil temperature checks. He's gone on the Greencast tool online. You can Google search Greencast tool. And he's seen that his soil temperatures are approaching 55 degrees Fahrenheit sometime around April 12th. That's what he's telling me. And I'm like, yep, that's good. That's when you put your first application of prodiamine down, is as the temperatures come up to that. Not necessarily on that day, but as they're reaching that. Now, if you do it on that day or a week later, that's fine. It's a target, but you can get a little ahead of the target. And he's telling me his second one is going to be May 20th. Now, what May 20th will correspond to is when soil temperatures are approaching 70 degrees Fahrenheit. This is the second time we want to put down our pre-emergent, and that's because crabgrass is germinating really heavy at 70. Crabgrass will begin to germinate, or the window opens for crabgrass germination at 55, and the pinnacle time, the peak of the germination, is at 70. So we put a pre-emergent application down leading up to each one of those, and he's got those two dates down according to where he lives. Great job. And then he's going to do it again in September. That's good. We don't need an exact date on that one yet, but that's if you are worried about Poa annua or one of those other type henbit, maybe something that can come in the fall and you're not seeding. Then you would put down a third application in September. However, it wouldn't be to prodiamine on cool season lawn because the label on our product, you would be over. But again, he's just talking about, hey, maybe in September. So we're not going down that road. The answer to the question here is Matt, you're right on, buddy, so far. Now, here's what he says. In between those treatments, my understanding is I want to use an organic fertilizer such as Milorganite. I wouldn't necessarily say that it's in between those, my friend. It's kind of as along. Like as you put down your first application of prodiamine, that's about the same time you can put down your first application of Milorganite. Coming up on that second application, 4 or 5 weeks later. So it's not that they have to be in between. They can be, though. But typically what you're going to work it out to, as a very general rule, again, if you have the guide, it gives you a lot more specific timing. But as a general rule, you're throwing down nitrogen fertilizer every 5 weeks or so. Maybe a little sooner than that, maybe a little longer than that, depending on how your lawn is responding. But I do recommend that you use Milorganite or another organic fertilizer because I want you to add a fertilizer that is also going to stimulate the microbes and increase soil carbon, and that's what organics do. Okay, so that's why I recommend those types of things. Now, I also want to make sure that I do spot treating for weed control. What would you recommend for weed control spot treating? Okay, so this is a great question, and this is what we're going to talk about. There's a ton of support for this on my YouTube channel, so check that out for sure. But what you want to look at is, if you just want to do spot treating, then I'm going to recommend that you go with a formulation called RTU, which stands for ready to use. And what that is it's a pre-mixed, it's typically going to be a gallon. It's pre-mixed weed control, and it comes with its own sprayer. Now they have battery-powered sprayers on them and stuff, but it's pre-mixed, and you can just go around and spot spray weeds as you see them. If you start there is totally no shame in that game. That's a great way to go. And the thing is, the stuff is pre-mixed, so you don't have to deal with any of it. I'm not going to use the word safe, but it is definitely safer, or it is definitely less of a risk because you're not having to mix anything, and when it's done, it's done. So that is a good option. However, I would like to remind you that in Wisconsin and most of the Midwest with cool season lawns, you're going to get a massive flush of dandelions at some point. If you're in a lawn that you have not known, or or what I'm saying is, if you're in a lawn that hasn't been previously treated, if you treat your lawn for a couple years in a row and stay on top of dandelions, you can severely reduce them. And I mean that with all that I know. Even when I worked for True Green, one of the things that we were the best at was killing weeds. And I will go to the end of the earth to tell you that True Green is very good at getting rid of weeds. If that's all you want to do, True Green will do a great job at that. And we would have lawns that once they were on the program, I was in sales. Most of my career was in sales at True Green, if you can't tell. And so I would see lawns that I had sold, and I would see what would happen to them, because in sales, you'd go back and visit your customers for other things like horticulture applications and aerations and things like that. And then sometimes we would get to know customers over time. You just would, especially on the south side of Chicago. People are super friendly. So I had customers that I got to know over the period of time, and I would see what their lawns would do. And I would see when we would start, it would just be the sea of dandelions. We would hit them with the weed control. They'd be all curled up and twisted up because of that's just the mode of action that the weed control uses, the auxins do. And you'd see them all twisted up the next day, and then, a couple mowings later, and there's no more dandelions. And the next year, the main flush of dandelions wouldn't be as bad. The third year, there'd be not as many. And then after that, they'd get one or two dandelions here or there, and those were ones that probably blew in from somewhere else. But by then, the turf canopy was thicker, and it was able to also help resist a lot of problems. So I'm just saying that flush of dandelions, don't panic about it. But if you don't know what you're doing on your lawn, in other words, this is your first year being there and the lawn hasn't been cared for, or you're new to treating it and you're going to get the big flush, that big flush is going to come right around the same time when soil temperatures start to reach 70 degrees. That's about when they're going to be in their main flower, and even quite a few of them will be in that puffball seed stage. So that 70-degree soil temp is that dandelion party time also. Probably 65, though, is when it really starts to really get going. But at 55 is when you'll start to see their leaves coming up. So you'll even start to see the serrated blade leaves of dandelions coming up as soil temperatures reach 55. It's very interesting how all of this stuff works together, isn't it? So what I'm getting at here, and this is where I go with these things, is you probably are going to have to blanket spray. Okay, Matt, so that's what I'm saying. You're probably going to have to. I'm not telling you to if you don't want to, but if you do get that massive flush of dandelions, you're going to want to wipe them out pretty quick. You don't want them going to seed. That's the idea, because if they go to seed, it obviously can spread the problem. So with that, you may want to, and you may want to consider then what they call RTS, or ready to spray. And those are the hose end applications. Now, those are only good for blanket spray. You can't really spot spray with those. Maybe you could zone spray, but they're just call it that because it's a literal spray and pray out there. And when I say spray and pray, I don't mean that in a way that tells you to go crazy. I can explain what that means another time. It's more about the apprehension we have as DIYers. When we do anything to the lawn, we always have this hope that we did it right because we don't have the confidence and experience that a professional does. So after we spray, we pray. We're like, oh, I hope I did it right. That's what spray and pray means. It doesn't mean anything other than that. But you do need to kind of go out there and blanket spray with these hose end applicators, and so that will give you a good blanket spray. And if you have a nasty dandelion problem, and trust me, if you live in a Midwest area that has mass dandelions in lawns, you know what I'm talking about. It looks crazy. It looks like aliens growing in the lawn when you have a really bad dandelion problem. It's pretty bad. So you may need to do a blanket spray. So don't rule that out. That's still a good option because you're not mixing anything, right? It's mixing through inside the bottle, inside the spray head and all that. So you still got to wear gloves. You still are always going to need to wear PPE with this stuff, but these are just less opportunity for something to, spill, get on you, whatever. So don't rule that out. Now, if you do want to do blanket sprays and spot sprays and you want to have the most versatility, then mixing your own from a liquid concentrate is the way to go. And that's what a lot of the videos were about. So with that, I would say those are the methods of application you want to consider. Now, you probably figured this out. I'm going to tell you that when you're new, I want you to go to a store local to you, a Home Depot, a Lowe's, a Menards is what you're going to have up through the Midwest. I like Ace. I try to shop at my local Ace when I can, or Independent Garden Center. But you're going to want to go and you're going to want to get a weed control from there. And you're going to want to do that because those weed controls that they have listed, especially at the big box stores, they're really there because they understand a couple things about us homeowners. And the first thing is they understand we don't have the experience level of a professional. They also understand that we don't have the quality of equipment that a professional would have. And when you put those two things together, they want to build in a little fudge factor. And when I say that, I don't say that in a lighthearted way. I say that in a way to just illustrate to you the point is that the active ingredients in those over-the-counter, I'm doing air quotes, over-the-counter weed controls, those active ingredients are at a lower concentration. So if you do make a mistake, even though I don't want you to, and I want you to write it all down, and I want you to verify what you apply, if you do make a mistake, you'll be okay. You're not going to scorch the earth. You're not going to destroy your soil in most cases. But it is still possible to overdo it. But they're giving you a little bit of leeway there. That's why I recommend you do that. The other thing is, especially with cool season lawns, the active ingredients that are in those products are going to eliminate a very large portion of the weeds that you have, especially if it's dandelion. It's not going to be a problem. You're going to get 2,4-D in there. You're going to get some dicamba, some MCPP. Yeah, you know me in there. And you'll probably even have a little quinclorac. So if you did get some early escapee crabgrass, you'll be able to get some control there too. So that over-the-counter weed control, especially for cool season lawns, is going to do you well. I've actually found over-the-counter weed control, very good quality stuff down here. Image for southern lawns, it's a purple bottle. Please read the label on everything you get. Don't just use my visuals here on this podcast, but that's a really good weed control. It's listed as St. Augustine and Centipede, but it's got Bermuda on the label and Zoysia and Bahia too. So over-the-counter stuff, I highly recommend you do that when you're learning. Now, later down the road, if you do have other problems or you do get more experience and you want to go to a lower use product, because again, a lot of these more, I'll just use the word professional formulations, you can get a lot lower use rate out of some other chemistries. So overall, it's less chemical into the environment. I'm not using the proper technical terms here, but there are some advantages to using some of the more formulated for professional type things. It's just going to be a lower use rate product. So, with that, you can also kill things quicker. You can also catch a broader spectrum of things. There are a lot of advantages to some of the better, more designer, more professional weed controls, but I don't recommend them. And I'm going to be honest with you, a good 80% of you probably will never have to buy anything but something over the counter, because you'll just accept whatever else is in the lawn that doesn't die from that. Maybe you'll just live with a little bit of quackgrass, or I don't even know if there is anything for quackgrass, but you get what I'm saying? You'll live with a few things because you're just like, you know what? I'm good. I don't have the dandelions there. I keep the clover out, I can kill the oxalis. Hey, couple 2-tree squirts here and there, little creeping Charlies, bing, bada, bang, bada, boom. I could do all that with my over-the-counter weed control. So why do I got to invest in tenacity, right? Who needs to invest in tenacity, right? So I'm just saying, I don't expect that most of you will have to progress to anything more than what you can get in the store. The other thing I did want to bring up with some of these different methods, we talked about, again, the ready-to-spray, which is the hose-in sprayer, or the ready-to-use, which is the pre-mixed with its own actuating squirter on the side. It's just ready to go. And then you obviously have the liquid concentrate. You can use the combination of those in tandem or together or opposite of one another. And if you do that, maybe you blanket spray with the ready-to-spray, but then you have the ready-to-use on hand. Now what you're doing is you're not having leftovers. You're not having something that you have to dispose of or dump out. Just use those different methodologies, whether it's, again, a pump sprayer where you can have ultimate flexibility if you're really good at measuring out what you need, or just maybe you only need the RTU 1 gallon a year to spot spray because you don't have that bad of a problem. But use the different methods that they offer you as a way to have a strategy that you don't have leftovers, or that you don't have something that you have to be left figuring out how to dispose of. So that's another little thing there. The other thing I want to mention quickly, when you do go to the store and you do look for the products there, you want to look for signal words. You want to stay away from words like kills grass and weeds, or grass and weed killer, or brush killer. You stay away from those things. You want to more look for kills the weeds, not the lawn, or weed control for lawns. Look for those buzzwords. Look for those keywords or those signal words to make sure that you are getting a product that is labeled for you. And then also make sure you get a product that has your grass type listed on it. All right, so our next one, we're still in Wisconsin here. I don't know who put these together. I'll have to talk to that guy that's in the studio doing the editing that always corrects me in between our segments here. I'll have to tell him to stop giving me so much Wisconsin. But hey, we're giving you guys some love up there in the Dairy State. This is Rob, and Rob is in far upstate, very far northern Wisconsin. He says, "Hello, LCN. I'm going into my second season as a lawn care enthusiast, and I have a question." All right, so my man is definitely experienced here. He's going into his second year. He says, "I just purchased the 2019 Cool Season Lawn Plan, and it references soil temperature quite a bit. Yes, it does. He says, I live in northern Wisconsin, and according to the data from the Greencast Online tool, my soil temperatures do not reach 70 degrees and do not average 65 degrees until right around the 4th of July. If you could shed some light on this for me, that would be greatly appreciated. So I went and checked a little town called Cornucopia, Wisconsin. It's way up there, a little harbor town. And he's right. They barely even get over 70 degree soil temps. So let me review our soil temperature milestones, and then I'll talk about this because it's great. I love how we can reverse engineer or reverse our thinking, and that can shed light on a lot of things for you guys. So the soil temperature milestones we use is when soil temperatures come up to 55 degrees Fahrenheit, that is when we put down our first application for crabgrass pre-emergent to prevent crabgrass, because that is also the time when the window opens when crabgrass can actually begin to germinate. So we get it down leading up to that point. The second soil temperature milestone is 65 degrees Fahrenheit. This one is for cool season lawns. This is letting you know that your lawn is going to start growing now, and you're going to have to start mowing every 3 to 4 days, or what I recommend is you really kick the mowing in at soil temperatures of 65 degrees. It means something a little bit different in the south, but pretty close still. And then 70 degrees is our third soil temperature milestone, and that is our second application, or leading up to that 70 degrees, is when we do our second application of our pre-emergent for crabgrass, because that is the time when the window is the widest open for the germination of crabgrass. So we do a split app, and we do the one at 55 and the one at 70, because it gives us a little bit of redundancy. It's like 2 coats of paint on a wall would be better than 1 thick coat. And that's exactly why we do it that way. It's called a split app. And if you're using our prodiamine product, it's 3 pounds per 1,000 square feet of our 0.38% prodiamine product. So that's the soil temperature milestones. Now, what he's telling me, he's like, Al, bro, I don't even hit 65 and 70 until like the 4th of July, brah. Now, I can't do a Wisconsin accent, I don't think, so I'm not even going to try. But he's like, what do I do it? So I like this because he's an extreme. So let me do this. Let me throw light on that by taking you down here to South Florida, where the other extreme. So in South Florida, my soil temperatures rarely dip below 65. They definitely don't go below 55, hardly at all. And I'm just below the frost line. If you go down into Boca Raton over by there, they'll never get below 65 degrees ever in their soil temp. So they're the opposite of this, right? They never go below 65, and they're always higher. So we are a year-round pre-emergent market down here. Now, I actually recommend, if you're in South Florida, that you use Pennant Magnum as your pre-emergent, because it's going to do a lot better on things like Florida pusley. It's going to do a lot better on doveweed, and it also can suppress sedges. But either way, we're a year-round type market down here. Now, we may not apply pre-emergence year-round, but we have that opportunity because of our soil temperatures never going lower. Make sense? We also never stop mowing. We mow year-round. And in fact, in the far South Florida, they mow twice a week year-round in a lot of cases for people that are super lawn care nuts. So that's our extreme. You're the opposite of that. So your window only opens for a short time, so you may not even need 2 applications of the pre-emergent. If you don't get to 55, I think I did, in Cornucopia, Wisconsin, their temperatures approach 55. Their soil temperatures are approaching 55 at the very beginning of June, like June 5th. So then you would apply a 3 pounds per 1,000 application coming up to June 5th in the beginning of June or the end of May, and that would give you 3 months of control. You may not need another application after that. That may take you all the way through the summer until your soil temps dip back below 55, which then the crabgrass window is out. The thing is, you're going to have a Poa annua window come in there too. I'm assuming Poa annua can grow that late, but either way, it's just a condensed window, so you actually would cut out pre-emergent applications, and you don't have to mow as often, and same types of things. You are actually very similar to what our friend Connor Ward is. I believe that his climate is probably very similar to yours. He and I were planning a trip this year, and I was asking him, I'm going to go out there to see him, and I said, I will only come when it's the hottest, because I believe that where he lives up there in Utah, that the only week of the year when it's the hottest would be the only year I wouldn't catch pneumonia from the cold. See? So it illustrates the extreme just as well. He came here, I don't know, when did he come here? September? Feels like forever ago. I miss you, buddy. September, when it's cooler. Like, I was like, oh, it's nice here. Maybe it was even October. I was like, it's nice here. He about died out trying to mow the grass, right? It was too hot for him. I told him, I can't go where you are because I will freeze to death. I don't have clothes. I mean, if I was visiting Connor like in May, I probably don't have clothes for that. I mean, what would I do? My toes would freeze off in my flip-flops. So it's extremes, right? And so we all have to make concessions. We might have to add a little more on or take a little bit off depending where our extremes are. So that was a great question. I'm glad we got to throw a little light on that. I hope that helped you out there, Rob. Okay, now I've got just one other quick one that I want to talk to you guys about, and this is going to reach anybody that has an irrigation system. Any of you guys that have your in-ground irrigation. First thing is, if you're running it right now or you're about to turn it on, you definitely want to go out and test every zone. You want to cut your heads out. If you have a rhizomus or a stolenus grass type like a St. Augustine grass or a zoysia grass or our alpha male friend Bermuda, it may have overridden some of your heads over the past, depending on when you're running your irrigation. Here in Florida, we run our irrigation actually during the winter. The winter is our dry season and the summer is our wet season. So my stuff's working well. It's been working. I've been monitoring. But for those of you coming out in different climates, you want to get out and make sure all your heads are clear. Make sure your zones, nothing's gotten moved, nothing's spraying over on the sidewalk. And you want to do the old tuna can test. You want to get out there and make sure that each zone is putting down, I typically recommend a 1/2 inch of water each irrigation cycle. That would be for all grass types. Some of our warm season grass types might need 1 inch or 1.5 inches a week. Some of your northern grasses, you may only have to give your lawn 3/4 to 1 inch a week, even in the middle of the summer. But either way, when you do an irrigation cycle, you want to give it a good deep watering, which I would typically say is 1/2 inch. So do the old tuna can test where you set your tuna can out in the middle of the area and run the zone for as long as you need to until you see that it's got a 1/2 inch in the tuna can, and then you know you're at a 1/2 inch, set it. Now, I will say that I used to tell people this all the time. When I worked for True Green, we would use that line. We would give them that tuna can test idea because it was something good to talk about. It was good information, and it would work if you did it. But I will tell you, in all of the years and all of the thousands of lawns that I went on when I worked for True Green Chem Lawn, I never one time saw a tuna can in somebody's front lawn, ever. I would see a lot of sprinklers going off all different times of the day, but I never saw a tuna can out there. But I want you guys to be the first. Please, if you're on Twitter, find me on Twitter. I'm at Alan Paul on Twitter. You can just Google me. Tweet me pictures of tuna cans in lawns. I want to see those tuna cans. You want to make sure that each zone is getting you a 1/2 inch. And that's really important because when I lived up north, people had irrigation systems. I don't know why this was, but it seemed like a universal standard that irrigation systems were set to run 10 minutes per zone, like every other day, or every day. But it was always this weird 8 to 10 minutes a zone thing. And that's why we contributed to a lot of thatch problems, because that 8 or 10 minutes was not covering, or it wasn't enough to penetrate down into the clay soil especially. And so rooting would happen right at the soil line in the thatch layer, and you'd have these spongy lawns because all the roots were just wrapping around up in the thatch because that was the only place there was water, and then eventually that's the only place there's nutrients, and then you're in a trick bag and you have massive problems, and you got to come in and just do nasty stuff that I don't even talk about in my books. I don't talk about that nasty dethatching stuff. So with that, I'm just saying, make sure you get those irrigation systems set up properly. Test all the zones, use the tuna can test, check everything out, make sure that it's running, and again, make sure all those heads are pointed right. With that, I'm going to go ahead and close it out this week. I really want to thank you all for hanging out with me this week in my garage. Make sure that you subscribe here to the podcast wherever you are. Also, check out the YouTube channel, The Lawn Care Nut. I got all kinds of cool tips that come out every single week. And so with that, I'm Alan Hay, The Lawn Care Nut. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you in the lawn.